Perhaps like me, you've seen videos and read on how to warm up for drawing, warm up exercises that we can do, and they end up all looking and feeling a bit like this. Practice doing straight lines, practice doing some hatching in different directions in a few boxes, and maybe some squirrels, some curves as well. Even a little bit of abstract perspective. Personally, I believe these warm-up drawing exercises are going to be of very, very little value, if any, in a drawing session. Let's not mistake doing drawing practice exercises, technique practice exercises, with drawing warm-up, where we're actually in our preparation stage for a drawing session that we're in and for a drawing that we're about to create. But I think the biggest problem with thinking of a drawing session warm-up exercises, a series of things such as this, is not even just the time it may take us for no real gain, but it's the distraction from what I believe is a far more productive, genuine warm-up exercise process we could go through, which would have immediate effects on our drawing session. And can I say personally, I found at times even profound impact. It can give us not just technical solutions to our drawing, but it can really boost our confidence, which then will flow into every mark and decision that we make downstream of it. So let me explain the drawing warm-up process I go through at the start of each drawing session that really does transform our drawing session. See, when I sit down to draw, I just can't disconnect immediately from whatever my brain has been occupied with, whether it's the profound or the superficial or the mundane. And it's not just the things that I'm thinking about, it's how I'm feeling about those things as well. None of these things might be conducive to a good drawing outcome. And most things we do, we're a little bit rougher at the start than even just a few minutes in, whether it's a drawing or whether it's jogging or operating machinery or doing maths. So our warm-up exercise is also going to bridge the time where, if you like, we're starting sluggishly in low gear and just moving through the gears clunk by clunk until we get to cruising speed. That's the speed we want to be going at when we actually start our drawing. That's the speed where things are going to flow easily, comfortably, and effectively. Now, we physically warm up for sports events by using the muscles, the limbs that we need to use in whatever our activity is going to be. And it's the same with drawing. We want to warm up to the things we have to do, the things we're going to be challenged to do in this drawing. But firstly, I work out, what am I trying to draw? What is the outcome I want to have? In a generalized sense, how am I wanting my drawing to look? Realistic, stylized, something in between, photorealistic. I next ask myself, why am I wanting to do that? Why am I wanting to capture this scene in this way? What are the qualities of that excite me, interest me? Because I really want to focus on those, because they may give me ways I can add my creativity to this scene by changing it in various ways to enhance certain effects or to minimize other effects that overall at the end will, in my opinion, give me a better drawing. And now I ask, how do I do that? What marks do I need and how do I put them on the paper to create the sorts of tweakings and effects that I want to get from this reference and achieve the drawing at the end that I saw in my mind at the beginning? So I saw this scene and I thought, this is going to make a great drawing. What did I like about it? I think a staircase is always exciting for composition because it leads the person looking at the scene on a journey, which in this case draws them into my drawing, which I think is always cool. I liked the contrast in surfaces. We have old weathered rocks, we have logs, we have various ground surfaces of leaf litter, soil, and exposed rock. We have really interesting angles, I think, that come in from all sorts of directions. These great Y shapes, this lovely S shape, diagonal here, and a great sense of distance from the foreground to these trees that we can just glimpse in the distance. And we also have the effect of light in this scene. The light's coming from a certain direction that creates certain effects, and I'm able to exaggerate those if I think it's going to help my drawing. These are all the things that I'm thinking about. I'm focusing on what I like about the scene because I want to make sure I capture them. I want to make sure I capture this S shape in the stairs if that's something that really is significant. But perhaps the more challenging part of this warm-up period is not so much the what and why, although we have to have those to do the third, but it's the how. It's the what marks will I use. Now, I have drawn this scene. You may recognize it from the video where I talk through my process in doing this, and I'll put a link to this video on the end screens. But the first thing I do is to grab an offcut and I play around with marks. I ask myself, well, in my drawing, when I'm drawing this, how do I think I'm going to draw it? What sort of marks am I going to use? And is it going to sort of create the effect that I'm wanting to create? And that's what I then start exploring with. And I use the pen that I think I will use in the drawing because that's also giving me information. I often change the pen after this process because I realize the line is too heavy or not heavy enough for the effect I'm trying to create. It's so important to keep thinking, what's the effect that I'm trying to create? And I can start to see what it's going to feel like to create this sort of scene that I see. I also call this my mark-making experimentation, where I play around with the marks that I think I'm going to need to create the scene. I'm not trying to draw the scene. I'm not trying to draw all of the scene. I'm experimenting with marks and checking angles and whatever I think is going to be helpful for me to have, if you like, a dry run before I do the drawing. This is the warm-up I do before I start a drawing. For this drawing, I can show you the actual warm-up that I did, and it was this. You can see that what I focused on was this section here. And I was particularly interested in what marks would I use for the hatching for these large boulders that are more shaded, as well as what sort of marks I could use to create the steps and some of the leaf litter. Because I had just drawn a number of bushland scenes such as this, I didn't feel the need to be practicing my marks for the trees. I was obviously also concerned about the leaf litter on this rock, as well as this clump of grass that was growing on the rock ledge there. And this would have taken me 3 to 5 minutes to do. I'm not talking of a lot of time for the whole process, maybe 5 minutes from start to finish, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. It depends how confident we are at this stage that we have the marks that are going to do what we think they're going to do and that we have the right pen to do them. But importantly, when I start to draw, it's not just the mechanics of my hand that's warmed up, that's in the groove, but it's my thinking, it's my creative processing in my head, working out what here do I like and why, and what am I trying to bring from this in my drawing. And now I bring that thinking to the very first stroke. I'm not still working out those things while I draw, possibly discovering things past the point where I have an opportunity to put them into practice. So let's draw this then. Remember, I'll put a link to the video with this drawing in it that has the voiceover explaining my process for this particular drawing as the end screen at the end of this video. So you'll be able to find it easily if you'd like to see more detail of this. But I have to say, it's one of my favourite drawings that I've done recently. And it doesn't take that long at all, does it? But this really took me less than 60 minutes, I think. So, do you think it was a productive drawing session? I think the warm-up certainly helped. It's always challenging to show a process where there are principles, but the application of the principles looks different in different situations. But I think it would be helpful to show a number of drawings that I've done and the mark making that took place before I did them. But I think the best way to do this would be to quickly look at Some more examples of the reference: the mark-making experimentation, which also served to warm up the creative thinking translation process, and then the drawing that came as a result, particularly with a range of very different subjects that were done in a very different time frame, because it doesn't matter whether this is a quick 10-minute sketch or whether it's an hour and a half drawing, I go through the same process. If you think this is good, please hit the like button for me. Now, let's look at those examples. Here we have my warm-up for this scene. And I've particularly been focused on capturing the effect of similar things, such as grass or trees, at different distances. And so we can see here what sort of marks for this closest shrub. How about these ones that we can see over the grass, and the effect of capturing them through the grass. The grass that's closer. What about the river, the water? What about when we go further into the distance, these trees here? And then what effects with marks is going to create the mountains, the farthest elements? Having experimented with this was my final drawing. And I hope you can see that this proved to be far more effective as a warm-up than if I'd been put in hatch lines in boxes. Very different subject here, from the panoramic to the small detail. With this small daisy spray, I wasn't overly concerned with drawing the leaves, but I particularly wanted to see if the way I was thinking I would draw the daisies would work, and particularly capturing the effect of how the petals fit in around the stem. I only needed to really check how one of them was going to work to feel that I would have what I needed for the rest, except for this little experimentation here of the effect that we have in the center of the flower and how I might capture that. And I think the finished drawing certainly benefited from the confidence that this gave me. Here is my most recent drawing, and I had to rummage around in the garbage bin to find my mark making for this small Australian galah. Birds are challenging because their silhouettes are very minimal, and yet slight moves, slight curvature in them can create such a big difference to how the body looks. Also, trying to get proportions correct is challenging, so it gave me practice with all of those things, and also some experimenting with the hatching. I didn't feel the need to worry about the grass because that's an area that I have more confidence in, and this is how it turned out. I think certainly benefiting from what I learned here to then put in practice here. Here we have another bush scene, similar in some ways with the steps, although these are made of stone, and there is a lot more detail with the bushland that we have around here. We have a creek running through, we have very close plants, and we have closer trees and further away ones. However, my mark making for this was relatively restrained. I was really just experimenting with these steps because this was the unfamiliar part of this overall drawing, but also an extremely crucial part. I was playing with the marks that would create the effect of the steps and the way the light is being cast, and how I might capture the shadows and the stonework that's flanking these cut blocks of stone. And this is how this drawing turned out. There was a lot happening here that I didn't feel the need to warm up for because I had a greater confidence level in that. However, on this scrap of paper, we have another scene. We have this English village. I was wanting to check the pen I was going to use. Could I draw the sort of detail I was thinking I was going to draw with it? Checked out the windows at actual size. Had a quick run through to see how some of the marks I was anticipating using to define the overall cottage would look, and a little bit of playing around with some foliage marks. And then this is how it came together in the final drawing. Here we have another bird, this time a magpie. My mark making for this is rather comprehensive because this was a very unfamiliar subject at this stage. This, I think, was pretty much the first bird I drew, and I really didn't have a sense of exactly how my marks were going to be and how they would look and how they would combine and what challenges in the anatomy of a bird I would find. And so I was far more comprehensive in what I drew. This probably took me 7 or 8 or maybe even 9 minutes to draw with thinking time. And the drawing was always going to be a quick sketch anyway. So this didn't take me that much less time than the actual drawing took. But I started my drawing in a far advanced place to where I started this preliminary sketch, this mark making from, and particularly in confidence with my marks and with the shaping of the body and so forth. This drawing of the Arc de Triomphe was for a sketch that was meant to be a very fast sketch. And so my mark making is also very fast because I'm wanting to warm up to what I'm actually going to be doing in my drawing. So if my drawing is going to be a fast gestural drawing, then I need to play around with marks in a fast gestural way. I'm also getting a sense of the tempo I want to be using in my drawing. And again, the difference between this and the finished drawing is more a matter of the fact that I've just finished it and added a few more details. And now we have a cottage. I've drawn many cottages, but each one usually has some interesting visual characteristic, which is why I've wanted to draw that particular cottage. And that's often the thing that I try and explore with the marks. Very often, this is the windows, the way they're formed, the way they're arranged. And so with this scene, I tried to draw pretty much actual size because I was also practicing what actual size was going to look like and feel like and what constraints that size would put on my mark making. And I also wanted to see if how I drew it, thinking it was actual size, was going to turn out to be actual size. And if my mark making was too large or too small, then that would tell me I need to just push a little harder to go larger or smaller. I'd be a little more self-conscious about that when I actually do my drawing. It also gives me a chance to explore the marks I'm going to do to get certain effects, such as behind the glass. And in this case, because the bottom half of these windows were plastic covered, it let me experiment with how I was going to create my own version of what was there. And that gave me the information I needed to be confident then in my drawing. And finally, this is quite a complex scene in terms of the things that are in it. And because of that, in my warm-up, I spent quite a bit of time exploring the different sorts of marks I was going to need, the different parts of the scene. So I had this tree here, which I've put here. Now you'll notice I don't have to arrange this compositionally the way it is in my scene, unless that's something I'm trying to explore as well. But I just wanted to see my marks for getting the bark and for capturing the shadow on the bark to see if that was going to work. We had this plant down here in the sunlight where the leaves are quite individually visible, so I wanted to try that. We had this darker bush behind in shadow where we're just drawing the effect of all of the small leaves together, so I had to go at that. We've got a tree coming in from the side here, which I put in here. We've got some leaves hanging down from the top. We've also got some branching on this trunk here, this small tree that we have here that I experimented with a little bit. And then I also experimented with just the far distance, and that some of them felt closer than others. And this is the drawing that came from that mark making. And we can see where I've used marks in my experimenting and how the final product, if you like, looked. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope you found this interesting. I think it's really, really an important subject. Warming up before we do something. Our drawings always flow from a process. Whether we understand and recognize the process or not, it's still there. The more we understand it, the more we can deliberately embrace it and do things in a way that will help that process produce the most results possible. This sort of experimentation has been so invaluable for helping me translate my reference into marks and get a feel for how that's going to work, and then to start my actual drawing in a far more confident frame of mind, which of course always flows through to more confident marks. So why not give my sort of warm-up exercises a go in your next drawing? But look, whatever you draw and whatever process works for you, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.